Meet Charlie. He's all about teaching his students the power of a well-crafted essay. But here's the twist. Charlie himself has completely neglected his own well-being. He's a lonely, morbidly obese man who rarely leaves his couch, let alone his home. Luckily, his best friend Liz, a nurse at the local hospital, takes care of him. Charlie's divorced and estranged from his ex-wife and child, spending his days binge-eating and preaching about writing. One day, there's a sudden knock on his door, and it sends Charlie into a panic. Thomas, a young man at the door, offers to call an ambulance, but Charlie refuses. Instead, he asks Thomas to read an essay about Moby Dick. Confused but determined to help, Thomas starts reading. Surprisingly, Charlie starts to calm down. Thomas tries to call an ambulance again, but Charlie declines once more. He does, however, ask Thomas to pass him his phone. Charlie calls Liz, who is responsible for his medical assistance. While they wait, Thomas asks Charlie why he made him read the essay, but Charlie gives a vague answer, hinting that he doesn't want to discuss it. Finally, Liz arrives, worried about her friend's life. She checks his vitals and realizes his high blood pressure and wheezing breathing are signs of congestive heart failure. Charlie disregards her request to go to the hospital because he doesn't have insurance and wants to escape Liz's nagging. He excuses himself and heads to the restroom, relying on a walker due to his large size. When he launches himself from the couch, his body resembles a majestic whale breaching the water's surface, both unsettling and magnificent. Liz seizes the opportunity to interrogate Thomas, discovering that he is a missionary from New Life Church, led by Liz's adoptive father Doug. The pain caused by New Life Church in the past makes Liz determined to protect Charlie from their influence, especially since they were responsible for her boyfriend's death. Despite Liz's constant reminders of the fatal consequences without medical assistance, Charlie remains stubborn. Eventually, Liz gives up and they start watching TV together. Even though he knows the severity of his condition, Charlie asks Liz to fetch him a bucket of deep-fried chicken. Since Alan, his boyfriend, passed away, Charlie has been incredibly lonely. He relies on wall hangings and a stick to assist him with daily tasks, and receives a regular delivery of pepperoni pizza from Gambino's. However, he never opens the door for the delivery person, instead leaving the money in the mailbox and requesting the pizza be left on the bench outside the door. He is fully aware of how people might perceive him and feels ashamed of himself. The essay about Moby Dick that Thomas read to him serves as a coping mechanism for Charlie. He knows the essay by heart and recites it repeatedly when he needs to calm his nerves. Worried about his condition, Charlie starts Googling his chances of survival. Seeing how low they are, he turns to his chocolate drawer and devours one bar after another. Suddenly, he realizes that he can't let his emotions control him. He must simply accept his fate and make the most of the time he has left. In a final attempt to bring purpose to his sad life, he decides to reconcile with his 16-year-old daughter, Ellie. He had abandoned Ellie and her mother, Mary, when she was just 8 years old to be with Alan, who was one of his students at the time. This has left Ellie bitter towards her father and the world in general. Her mother also took the divorce badly and became an alcoholic, leaving Ellie as a mean-spirited teenager who mocks her father's condition without hesitation. Despite Ellie's cold behavior, Charlie is determined to improve his relationship with her. When he discovers that she is failing in school, he offers to help her rewrite her English essays. However, knowing that this alone won't guarantee regular visits from Ellie, Charlie also bribes her with all the money he has in his bank account. Reluctantly, she agrees, even though she is angry with her father. Before leaving, Ellie demands that her father stand up and walk towards her without any support to prove his love for her. She pulls away from Walker and forces him to attempt walking on his own. Charlie tries his best but fails miserably, leaving him extremely disappointed. Ellie storms out of the door, leaving him struggling to catch his breath. When Liz comes to visit and check on Charlie's health, she gives him a device to track his stress levels. She also discovers an essay with Ellie's name on it, indicating that Charlie has been trying to reconnect with his daughter despite having no custodial rights. This angers and worries Liz, who makes him promise not to contact Ellie again. Charlie meekly agrees to ease her mind. To distract himself from the stress, Liz hands him a meatball sub for dinner. However, lost in his thoughts, Charlie forgets to chew properly and starts choking on his food. Liz quickly rushes over and forcefully removes the food from his windpipe, giving him a big punch on the back. This terrifying incident leaves both friends shaken, and they continue their tasks in silence. The next day, Charlie prepares the house for Ellie's visit and searches for a notebook for her to write her thoughts in. While doing so, he comes across a framed picture of him and Alan, bringing back fond memories and a faint smile. Intrigued, he decides to finally open the locked bedroom. However, as he reaches for the key, it slips from his hand and falls under a cabinet, making it impossible to retrieve. Charlie gives up and patiently waits for Ellie to arrive. Once she arrives, he begins to go over her essay on Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, which is known as one of the most famous pieces of poetry in the world. It is celebrated for its portrayal of poets and their connection with nature. However, Ellie fails to see the depth of it and simply dismisses it as garbage. This revelation makes Charlie realize how cynical his once cheerful and beautiful daughter has become. Despite this, he still holds on to hope that he can ignite Ellie's interest in the poem. He starts asking her more general questions, even though she is initially reluctant to answer. Eventually, she opens up about her mom and their recent move to a new house. In return, she asks Charlie about his weight gain, to which he explains that it happened after someone close to him passed away. Ellie interrupts him bluntly, suggesting that it was because of his boyfriend. This catches Charlie off guard, as he remembers the dinner where he cooked steaks for Alan, Ellie, and himself. He is surprised that she still remembers that. Charlie then asks Ellie to write down her thoughts in a notebook and excuses himself to go to the washroom. The day has been incredibly challenging for him. He's had to face numerous triggering moments that have all brought back the painful loss of his partner. Charlie finds solace in the washroom, where he allows himself to sob and release his emotions. Just as he's in there, someone knocks on the door. It's Ellie, opening the door to find Thomas, who has returned on his evangelical quest. She lets him into the house but questions his identity. Thomas explains that he's a missionary from New Life Church, here to spread the message of Jesus. Ellie dismisses it as nonsense but agrees to meet him again tomorrow. Meanwhile, Charlie exits the hallway of his house and hears the sound of Ellie taking a photo. She leaves, leaving Thomas and Charlie alone. Thomas shares his belief in the end of the world and the potential return of Christ. However, Charlie, who has read everything published by New Life, simply doesn't believe in it. Despite Charlie's skepticism, Thomas remains persistent in wanting to help him. Charlie asks Thomas to retrieve the key from under the cabinet, and finally, the bedroom is unlocked. As they discuss New Life, Liz arrives at Charlie's house and is furious to see the missionary there. Initially, she demands Thomas to leave, but then invites him to stay for a chat. Liz has brought a wheelchair for Charlie, a simple custom-made one that was originally meant for another patient who had passed away. It had been lying around at the hospital. Liz then drags Thomas out and starts pouring her heart out about all the pain and suffering that New Life has brought upon her and Charlie. She tells him about her adoptive parents who run the New Life Foundation, and how her brother Alan, who was also a missionary, had been sent to South America for work. It was there that he discovered their father had arranged a marriage for him with a Christian girl, despite him being gay and not wanting to ruin anyone's life. When Alan returned to Idaho, he met Charlie and they fell in love. However, the teachings of the church became a burden for him, and he couldn't overcome it. Eventually, Alan stopped eating and went missing. His body was later found washed up on the beach. Charlie can hear Liz crying as she finishes the story, leaving Thomas feeling weary and afraid. He runs away after Liz leaves. Charlie enters Alan's locked bedroom, which still carries his scent, providing comfort for Charlie. During dinner, Charlie decides to read what his daughter wrote in her notebook. There are only 3 lines. This apartment smells, this notebook is, and I hate everyone. Seeing that his talented daughter has lost her creativity saddens Charlie, but he still manages to find humor in what little she has written. The next day, Ellie returns to the apartment to pick up her completed essay. Charlie tries once again to connect with his daughter by apologizing for leaving her and trying to justify his actions. However, Ellie is not interested in any of it. She feels frustrated and deeply hurt by what he did, and nothing he says can change that. He attempts to explain that he always wanted to be a part of her life, but her mother never allowed it. Ellie changes the topic and offers to make him a turkey sandwich. Charlie, hopeful for a positive gesture, doesn't notice her adding 2 sleeping pills to the meal. After a few hours, Thomas knocks on the door. Ellie, who is smoking pot, offers some to him as well. Thomas reveals that he used to be an addict and no longer smokes. Despite his reluctance, Ellie pressures him to have some anyway and starts asking him about his new life as a missionary. It is revealed that Thomas came to Idaho as a missionary, but not with the New Life group. He stole money from his church group and ran away when he realized they weren't making a difference. He is now scared to contact his parents in Iowa because of the shame he has caused them. As Thomas shares his story, he comes across a Bible that belonged to Alan. Ellie secretly records their conversation and plans to expose him. Just as they finish talking, Liz and Mary enter the house. Thomas becomes frightened and quickly runs away from Ellie. Ellie finds herself in a serious predicament after giving her father sleeping pills, which could have been fatal. Mary is furious with Charlie for going behind her back, although she knows her daughter well enough to understand that there must have been a reason for Ellie's actions. Mary confronts Charlie about whether he has told Ellie about the money, which shocks Liz deeply. Liz had believed that Charlie had no money at all, and she is hurt by this news because it means that he could have gotten the necessary medical help all along. Disappointed by the lie her best friend told her, Liz leaves the apartment. In a fit of anger, Ellie yells at her mother and tells her father that she doesn't care if he is alive or dead. Although this hurts Charlie, he still reminds Ellie to take the essay he wrote for her before she leaves. Mary is shocked by the condition of her ex-husband and upset that he has decided to give Ellie the money at such a young age. Charlie still holds onto some hope for Ellie, while Mary has completely given up and sees her daughter as a monster, using examples of her trolling people on Facebook as proof. In addition to discussing their daughter, the two parents reminisce about the good moments of their marriage, even though it is a few years too late. Mary offers her condolences to Charlie for Alan's untimely death, and they share a heartwarming moment where Mary reveals her concern for him. Mary also confesses to Charlie that she feels ashamed of how their daughter has turned out and that's why she kept Ellie away from him for so long. She begs him to stay away from Ellie, but he refuses. He wants to do something good in his life before he dies. This leads to an argument between them and Mary leaves before it escalates further. Meanwhile, Charlie's regular pizza delivery arrives, but this time the delivery man, Dan, waits for him. Dan mocks Charlie's appearance, which angers him. Charlie's emotions spiral out of control and he starts binge-eating everything in sight. This makes him sick and he ends up throwing up. He feels a deep self-hatred and starts crying. However, he quickly composes himself when Thomas knocks on the door with some news. It turns out that Ellie sent evidence of Thomas's confession to his missions minister and his parents. Surprisingly, his parents accept him despite his flaws and ask him to come back home. Charlie is relieved to hear that his daughter saved someone's life. Thomas then tells Charlie that there is a way for him to be saved too. He recites a verse from the Bible and advises Charlie to seek forgiveness from the body that his spirit resides in. He explains that Alan's choice to be homosexual instead of being loyal to God led to his downfall, but it's not too late for Charlie to seek redemption and leave his body. His soul can still be saved. Blaming Alan's death on his orientation is something Charlie cannot tolerate. He becomes angry and starts revealing private details about his and Alan's relationship to Thomas, leaving the young man feeling unsure and uncomfortable. Charlie goes on to say that he prays there is no afterlife because he doesn't want Alan to see what he has become after his death. In the midst of all this, Thomas has an outburst and confesses that he finds Charlie absolutely disgusting. Without saying a word, Charlie silently hands over the Holy Bible to Thomas and asks him to leave his house immediately. In his sorrow and anger, Charlie posts a notification on the college portal, urging students to finally write something honest. The next day, during his class, Charlie reads out a few honest responses from his students, appreciating their candor. He decides to be honest with them as well and turns on his camera for the first time ever. He shows his students who he truly is, vulnerable and all, and ends the class by slamming his laptop into a wall. The sight of the broken electronics worries Liz when she brings food for Charlie. She can sense that time is running out for her friend and tries to make the most out of their interaction, knowing it could be their last. However, she does mention to him that she will never forgive him for putting her through all the stress and torture. It's similar to how Alan had done before. In a moment of honesty, Charlie confesses to blaming himself for Alan's death. He always thought his love would be enough for Alan, but it clearly was not. Despite everything, Liz tells him that he was the only reason that Alan lived a few more years. She never doubted what her brother meant to him. As the two friends are talking, Ellie comes screaming into the house. She says that the teacher failed her because of the essay she submitted. Liz leaves the house one last time and allows the father and daughter to talk it out. Charlie tells Ellie that if she would have read the essay once, she would know what she was submitting. It was, in fact, the Moby Dick essay that calms Charlie's nerves. As it turns out, it was written by Ellie when she was in the 9th grade. He states that it was one of the most honest and well-written essays he has ever read. Ellie starts to cry upon hearing this, but she is still putting on a tough exterior. She offers to call the ambulance multiple times because she does not want to see her father die. However, he simply requests her to read the Moby Dick essay for him. After a few rounds of persuasion, she finally starts to read the essay. This gives Charlie enough strength to push himself off the couch and onto his 2 feet. With great effort, he walks towards his daughter and stands face to face with her, just like she had commanded him to do on their first meeting. This act proves how much his daughter means to him. He feels free and allows his spirit to leave his body.